Hello, dear Starshines. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Christina here. Welcome to today's Lunchtime Chats. For those of you who are new, my name is Christina, and I'm an acceleration expert. And we are here to talk about those topics and issues that are significant for us starseeds, way showers, new paradigm visionaries. We have abilities, capacities, perhaps, that are not embraced by our larger human family. Therefore, we have very unique perspectives to the challenges that we face during this interesting time of transition. So I am here to do the best of my ability to convey a liberated perspective to these pieces so we can step forward in our sovereignty and with inner freedom and as multidimensional beings learning how to live the life true to ourselves. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'll give everybody a minute to get on board. I'm a couple minutes late here. I am in beautiful, beautiful Montana right now. It's absolutely gorgeous. It would be even more sunny and bright blue behind me, but we've had a really interesting lightning storm come through the area a couple nights ago. And so lightning has been lighting up the forests around here, and so it's kind of foggy, or not foggy, smoky, due to all the fires. It was really neat, very rare moment, and I've shared this a couple times with friends, but I'll share it with you guys. We're up camping up at the ridge, and I watched the bolt of lightning come down and strike a tree across the lake, and the tree caught fire. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and I felt like that was a very synchronistic, but, you know, a very interesting thing to witness in the moment that I was witnessing it. And what I want to say with that is that, synchronicity is all around us. The universe is always speaking to us in different ways. It's just a matter if we have the eyes to see, the patience to hear and listen, and the heart to really be present with what's truly being shared with us in that moment. Kind of, if you guys caught the chat that we had last week, I was super blissed out from our Sasquatch camp out and communicating and connecting with the elemental realm. There's a really big piece. So if you want to truly have clarity and see the truth, you need to be willing to have an open heart, to have a yes for love, have a yes for loving, right? That's how we actually get our clarity, the clarity that we're asking for. So, okay, everybody's coming on board. Go ahead, let me know you're here. Say hi and tell me where you're from. Hey, Beverly, good to see you, darling. Beverly's from Toronto. We have a nice, strong Canadian contingent here in this community. Okay, so I'm in Montana. Why am I here? I originally came here, and I think it's still unfolding. We came here for a couple of reasons, but one of them was to visit the Megaliths of Montana. Hello, Emmeline. Good to see you. Thank you for saying hi. This is our dear sister from England. And a lot of people don't even realize that there are megaliths in Montana. And let me talk for a second about what megaliths are. They are massive, giant stone formations that are placed or exist on certain energy lines / vortexes. And where these stone people are resting are there's usually some level of hyperdimensionality activity in the vortex of these stone people. Hello, aloha, Joanne. So good to see you. It's been a while. I'm glad you're here, darling. So there are megaliths that are really well known, and there's megaliths that are not so well known. The ones in England, for example, are really well known. We have Stonehenge, we have Avebury, and all through Europe, there's a network of stone people referred to as dolmens, and these are less assuming stone formations but they are have been researched and looked into by highly developed human beings. And there's a sect of master builders that have figured out how to decode these dolmens, these formations, these megaliths. And some of them were vortexes used for specific kinds of healings, specific kinds of reorganization of energy to help with fertility, to help with birthing, to help with healing ailments, stuff like this. So some of these dolmen / megalith structures have like an on button, so to speak, where you do something to open the energy vortex. And then once the energy vortex is opened, then you can go into certain regions of the energy vortex, depending on the kind of healing, the kind of transmission, the kind of intent you have for being there. So that in a gist is very short gist, right? That's a major summation of of megaliths on this planet. They're different than temples because temples are built, right? Built as in, not that the megaliths aren't built, but it's a completely different level of building, much more ancient, much more, I want to say, untethered. For example, we have the Egyptian pyramids. That's a powerhouse. Those are clearly built. We have the pyramid network that goes all through Central South America. Clearly, those were all built. And this is so throughout Asia and other places. And then you have formations like I mentioned in Stonehenge. Those were clearly all arranged. Okay, they weren't necessarily built. They were maybe quarried and arranged, and they're arranged more in the gill of maybe how we see a crop circle coming to be. Okay, so I've been introduced to many new thoughts around these megalithic stone people, and I find some of them interesting. So I want to share some of those with you guys to see what you think about this. Because as we know, our history is highly manipulated and truncated. And the truncation usually happens to make convenient whatever narrative a particular species is propagating. So, for example, if you talk to somebody that is into the Judeo-Christian narratives, you know, their history is going to start with Adam and Eve in the garden, right? And that arguably could be 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, like this. The Judaic Christian timeline is most often agreed to be about 5,500 years old. And this is the Hebrew calendar that goes from. But we have much older timelines, right? If you keep going back several hundreds of thousands of years, you'll get to the place, even millions of years, you'll get to the place where the narrative starts to tell us that reptilian beings were the first beings to be on this planet. And then if you go back even more millions of years, the first sentient beings were not the reptilians. And I'm not talking about Draco reptilians, I'm just talking about the reptilian template of consciousness. But if you go back even more millions, billions of years ago, there is a history that tells us that the first sentient beings were ant people and fish people. You see? So depending on what narrative is getting propagated, being talked about, they're going to reference a timeline that's convenient to that narrative. And this is something that has really loosened me up and freed me in a lot of ways from hearing different narratives and timelines and thinking, oh, that's wrong, you know, or, oh, this is that, right? I realize now, and it took me a while to get here, and you guys let me know. It took me a while to get here where I can listen to these different narratives, and I'm just putting it on a spectrum. And when I put them on a spectrum, then, you know, most of the time it is in resonance with truth. And it's just, you know, it's not covering the larger spectrum. And one being better than the other is not true. It really all depends on the target that you're hitting. What is it that you're trying to, what is it that you're intending to activate inside of humans, inside of their light body, inside of their emotional field, inside their DNA. Okay. So circling back around to megaliths, right? So we have these dolmen structures that are very well known through Europe that have a on-off mechanism to open and close vortexes for a particular intent and purpose. And different dolmens and megaliths are located in different parts of the energy lines. And we were talking about the dragon lines, the different. Now, when I'm talking in a master builder language, they don't say ley lines, because ley lines is an overgeneralization to the actual energy lines that they track into. They track into solar lines, energy lines that go along with the sun. They track into lunar lines that energetically, electromagnetically track with the cycles of the moon. Then you have fire lines, water lines, which are like water veins under the ground. And stuff like this. So they talk about energy lines of an area in a very different way. Ley lines doesn't necessarily have as a place as it does in the normal way that the popular idea that we talk about when we talk about energy lines. So what the master builders are discovering is that these megaliths and dolmens are placed perfectly on these different energy lines. Some of the most powerful ones are on fire lines or dragon lines, and but a powerhouse isn't always what you need. It really depends on this intent. So other dolmens were built on water lines that had to do with purifying, or had to do with connecting with the intelligence of the elemental presence of water. So it quite literally creates a vortex and a region where zones of reality can come meet, kind of like what we talk about with the fairy accord, where zones of reality can meet and create a profound healing for somebody. And it could be a healing, but it also could be, for, like I said before, ripening seeds, so they're more likely to grow, or some other level of fertility to open up and anchor in. And even, and this is a suspicion that I've had for a little while, and even perhaps conceive in, like perhaps these dolmens were used to create these overlapping fields to conceive a divine child, or to unite a divine couple. Okay. Whew. Oh, okay. So these dolmens and megaliths are absolutely fascinating. And the ones that have been discovered in Montana are no disappointment. They have been studied by Dr. Osmakovich, as you guys might recognize that name. He's the one that discovered the Bosnian pyramids and who has spearheaded all the scientific investigation around the Bosnian pyramids and the pyramids. So there's the Temple of the Sun, but that whole valley, all those mountains are all pyramids they discovered. There's even a dragon pyramid that's not in the typical shape; it's in a ridged shape. It's like a long oblong kind of pyramid shape. And he spearheaded the study, and actually is a groundbreaker in a lot of the kinds of instrumentation that's used to evaluate these structures. So he's been invited in to check out the Montana megaliths, and had spearheaded a thorough maybe not thorough. What does that mean, right? Depends how long you're there. But has came in to use some of those diagnostics that he's been using in the Bosnian pyramid studies, and brought them here to study the megaliths. And they are finding that they're really powerful vortexes with these formations. The woman that has spearheaded the work is her name is Julie Ryder. I think it's a husband-wife team that is propagating the study and exposing these different megaliths to the larger collective mind. So for those of you that want to do your research around that, they do 3-day workshops I just heard about, where they take people into the woods into the wilderness to visit these formations. And they're no short track though. They are not the kind where you can just drive up, park in a parking lot, and visit. From what I'm learning is that many of them are like 30-mile hikes into the mountains, one way. So it's definitely a multi-day effort to go in and experience many of these megalithic formations. But she's done a lot of study and has shared pictures and stuff like this. I'm not necessarily in a position to be able to go and hike in, do a 3-day hike in and 3-day hike out, or even do a real, like a 20-mile hike a day. That's not the level of effort that I'm prepared to do. But I am becoming aware that there are many, many megalithic and dolmen structures here in Montana in the mountains that perhaps are even outside the scope of the part that she's focusing on. So I'm suspecting that, those are more the things that for me to discover while I'm here. All right. Hello, darlings. Hello. Hello, Carol. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Crystal. Good to see you, darling. Young trick named Jim. Hello from Colorado. Came in late. I don't know if anyone already mentioned this, but the title for this episode appears to be erroneous. Really? Let's see what it says. What is this? Lunchtime Chats, episode 21. That's the title I have. I don't know, Bev. What do you think? Thanks, Young Trick. I'll put Bev on that. She can maybe look into what you're talking about. All right, so there's these megalithic structures. They're used for all these different purposes, and yeah. So there's the structures that are built that create hyperdimensional zones of reality, like the temples that we're aware of, and then there's ones that look more of a natural formation. Now, this starts to beg an interesting question, because we've already in humanity and through history, via studies like Graham Hancock and others, I think Anthony West, that they've pretty much blew the lid off the fact that it's this is ET technology that we're looking at, these temples, pyramids, like the pyramids of Giza and ones through Central South America and Asia. And the lore corroborates that. The indigenous lore around these temples also corroborates that theory, those thoughts. And I've also had some intuitive guidance around the temple builders, and I'm getting, especially the ones in certain ones in Central America, they were built by Hyperboreans. Others say they were built by Anunnaki. Others say they were built from yet another ET race. According to the Inca, Amaru Muru, the great serpent king, is the one that built their temples. So, they all have stories that indicate, where these structures came from and where the technology came from. So we can say that, yeah, they were built by potentially extraterrestrial beings that were seeding life on this planet for some reason. And for some reason, seeding life on this planet means also having a temple structure to hold certain zones of reality in place, to hold morphic fields in place. Perhaps this is the way that beings come to enter the dream of the Great Mother. Could be. But I'm feeling like the whole megalithic dolmen thing, those are perhaps more in alignment with advanced consciousness that are indigenous to this planet. Advanced consciousness that has been a part of the evolution of this planet from perhaps even the beginning, whatever the beginning means. I suppose what I mean by beginning, I would say ant people, probably going back to the ant people and fish people. And the time, according to Sasquatch record, let me first add this in before I go on this other type. So according to Sasquatch records, at the time when life was being seeded on this planet in the version of fish people and ant people, the Earth did not spin on its axis. It revolved around the sun similarly to the moon. And or so it did have a spin, but it wasn't creating days and nights like what we have. It was the same side of the sun was the same side of the Earth was facing the sun as it rotated around, as they were going through space. And that was an indication of the kind of consciousness that the dream was accommodating. The dream of the Great Mother was accommodating. So I would trace it back to that only because this is kind of like a pivotal moment in the growth, in the activation of the consciousness of Pachamama as Cosmic Mother. I think that's why I would go back to that. And, you know, that's how I feel today. Who knows? Tomorrow I might have a whole nother theory, a whole nother feeling about it. So you guys take that for what it's worth. So the ant people have advanced building technology, and they experienced AI cyborg relations before any other consciousness really on this planet, in this realm, in this dream space. And they've gone through a lot of those lessons that we are going through. They already went through the split between the power over dynamics, such as with the Orion War agenda, the power over agenda. And they were also the first to realize the way forward beyond those dramas. Okay. But back when they were enslaved because they were master builders. They were enslaved because they had advanced technology and was able to harness the power of nature, of natural force, to generate power, to generate tap-inable power sources. And power sources aren't just to run like technology, like what we got here. Power sources also hold fields of consciousness open. They hold field potentials, morphic fields open. So when you have for example, you guys let me know if you've had this happen. Like say you go into ceremony and you have like a really beautiful, amazing ceremony experience, and synchronicity is just, everywhere, and you feel like the air is so thick and everything is so imbued. That's energy. That's the reality around you, heavily, heavily imbued with energy. So when I'm talking about the kinds of technology that these ant people were building, they are opening fields within fields within fields that heavily imbue this reality with energy. So it's not just to run technology like what we qualify as energy. It's to hold field potentials, to imbue this reality on a much deeper level with consciousness. So the studies that Osmagovich is doing in the Bosnian pyramid complex is absolutely groundbreaking and essential for humans to reactivate this technology. And, I've been having guidance from the ant people for a while. Those of you guys have been watching for a while, I've gone into this a few times. And there are a lot of ancient ant people colonies here in the U.S. One of the former strongholds is in the Moreland Hills of Kansas. Okay, and I can see the structures right off the freeway. And it's really clear how their technology, how they're building technology, what it looks like, right? It's clear that it's different than regular stone formations. And that's because the layering and how they do that, and the actual kind of rock that's layered in. For example, a major trademark to their technology building style is massive slabs of ceramic tile, baked clay. So it's like these massive slabs of baked clay. And when they analyze this, it looks like all of this must have all simultaneously appeared all at once. With the linear understanding of how this works, it doesn't add up. but that's what the data tells them, that this was just all of a sudden so in our reality. And when they study it, there are very clear and obvious indications of these layers of ceramic tiles that are creating the shapes in between the rocks. So that's a signature of Ant People technology. And what I've been also shown, and this was several years ago, but it's coming back full circle now, especially with this megalith conversation, is that as the sun becomes more and more active, and as the electricity of the energy, the electromagnetic electricity of the earth ebbs and flows, there's going to be a time when the sun's activity is going to be peaking with the same wave of the electromagnetic activity of the earth, and there's like an overlap that's going to happen, and in that overlap that's going to activate the people technology. So what does that mean for us? That means morphic fields, consciousness fields, are going to be activated and available for humanity. And where are they going to be activated and available for humanity? Here in Montana, Moreland Hills in Kansas. They're also indicating there's places in Oklahoma. There's probably even more than that. Those are just the ones that I know about. You have the Bosnian pyramids, right? What would happen if that energy center comes full on activated and that morphic field becomes fully imbued with consciousness? What's that gonna do to Eastern Europe, the people? And there's the water sources. See, that particular area is especially important and significant because the waters there are still pure. That's the cleanest waters I have ever seen. Most pristine, beautiful rivers, streams, and creeks I've ever seen are in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and and it's very sparsely populated. So a lot of the towns and villages, their water source, their municipal water source is still the river that runs through town. People don't dump crap in the river that runs through town because they know everybody drinks from that water, right? So when the fields of this technology get activated, it's the waters are a part of that activation, and it's going to get proliferated throughout the lands of the Balkans. So that's going from the coast of Croatia all the way up through into Romania, Transylvania, Slovenia. I mean, all these. I'm sorry, my geography is not great there, but all the way up through the up until the Latvias and oh shoot, now there's another one. Lithuania, all that whole area of Eastern Europe. So all that's going to get activated. Everybody's going to start getting reinformed in a different way with these fields, with these morphic fields, and not just people, but elementals as well. So the elementals are going to wake up to a whole nother level, and they are going to have, let's say, that much more potency to open up zones where these pieces overlap. And then you have all these people, all these rogue factions of people that have an invested interest and are taking action towards restoring what we're calling the fairy accord, right? Now, just sit back for a second and imagine that, what that can do, right? What that is really doing. I think another place of magic where there's technology, it's not Ant People technology, it's something else coming online, is around the Vancouver area. So the powers that be that overlay all this technology on top of elemental intelligence, if we look at why they're doing things in the places that they're doing them, right? It's in an effort to keep it locked down. But the fact is that there's so much of it around this planet, you can't lock it all down. You can't lock it all down. It's not possible. So there will be, as we wake up more and more, there'll be strongholds, there'll be pockets, right? And I guess I'm saying this so you guys can also start framing up your understanding a little bit differently, because there's a lot of narratives that paint a picture where it's inevitable there's going to be a very significant collapse, whether it be economic or technology or whatever. I mean, all the way up to this whole solar flare thing. We're going to lose our atmosphere, or the pole shifting, or whatever. All that doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters, but doesn't matter, right? Because when we are stepping outside of these paradigms of understanding that are forming our reality and the laws of our reality in which we think it all is so, none of that needs to be so. We can completely go through a pole shift and not have a major change or not have a major destruction happen in this reality, because the earth is not what we think it is. This planet, what we call a planet, is not just this blue ball circling the sun, flying through the galaxy. No, that's not true. Many, many, many universes, realities are unfolding itself on this plane of existence. They're all unfolding themselves within the dream of the Pachamama, within the dream of the Great Mother. Pachamama means literally in Quechua, realm of the Great Mother. It's like they call it right out in their language. Okay, guys, let me know if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Is this connecting for you? I feel like there's a more and more beauty and I guess hope's not quite the right word, but there's more and more potentials that are available to us in our awareness than ever before. So as things get more intense going in the other direction, we are also opening up to the possibilities in the opposite direction. In these, or even maybe that's a more unified direction, we can say it. Because there's also the hijacking of the concept of hive mind. That is something that is fascinating and terrifying, depending on how you relate to it. That's a whole nother tangent. Let me first check in with you guys. If what I'm saying is landing, you guys understand what I'm talking about with these potentials, field potentials. Now, when a field potential is really limited, because it will quite literally feel heavy, right? It'll feel heavy. You'll feel your nervous system will be triggered. You'll be on guard. Maybe your fight or flight is getting kicked on. Maybe the thoughts and feelings are really negative, as in critical, fault finding, looking for fear places where to guard yourself, go into survival mode. Okay. Those are examples of places that have a very limited field potential. And that's because there's only certain fields of consciousness that environment can hold in place. A lot of this is due to consciousness grids, right? That's a real thing. Consciousness grids. So, and there's other places where it's really easy to be uplifted and light and loving and kind and hopeful and aspiring and stuff like this. That's because that environment holds another kind of field potential, and it's overlapping nesting dolls of energies. This is why forest bathing is so effective. And it's obvious when you go into a forest from a city center. I mean, the shift in the energy is absolutely obvious, even for someone who is not intuitive. They definitely can feel the change. And there's several people that I've talked to lately, or they have come into my awareness, I should say, like that. There's several people that have come into my awareness lately who really have that feeling, that thought that, nature is their spiritual nourishment, inspiration, teacher. And I think this is very, very common to men, particularly, but also to people that are confused and don't know which way to turn. They just want to keep it simple. Okay, I feel great in nature, so therefore I'm going to do that. And when they seek solitude within nature, then their own true nature inside of themselves starts to resonate with those fields, and things come through, and you have awakenings, you have downloads, you have healings, you have discoveries, you have parts of your own DNA that gets activated. So nature does have its wisdom around that, absolutely. So here, hold on a second. My brain just went in a couple different directions. I have to decide which one is the best one to go. nature. All right, so I guess I need to talk about the hive mind thing. I'll come back and zip this all up. So we're going to throw the piece of hive mind in there. How many people have heard AI hive mind technology and have heard alarming narratives in relationship to it? Okay. And there's a lot of hostility and fear around the idea of hive mind. And there's a lot to be said about that, because there are grids that quite literally humanity is already living in a hive mind. We think we have free will, but we don't, because we have artificial overlays on consciousness grids that tell us things, but it's on our subconscious. So it's informing our subconscious beliefs, which manifest within this reality. So in many, many ways, for thousands and thousands of years, humanity is already plugged into a hive mind. I think this is why so many people are triggered by the kinds of narratives that are put out there. Okay. So, and it's because quite literally, we're getting hijacked without being aware. And we're not aware because we have blinders on. As soon as we're willing to take those blinders off, we become more aware, and then we are less susceptible to those programs that are in the grids, to those energy streams or siphoning streams that are in the grids. Okay. This is why knowledge is power on many, many. This is one of the many levels of why knowledge is power, right? So we have this hive mind thing, which can, be connected into the whole 4D field collective conscious and how we all move as a collective. Okay. And the collective field needs to be in a certain place in order for certain other kinds of field potentials to come forward, such as having experiences with elemental devas, having experiences of miracles and magic, of Sasquatch, of interdimensional exchanges, stuff like this. But there is another side of hive mind that I want to plant the idea with you guys. And this is an idea, and I'm not saying anything is authority. You guys know me. It's really about, these are ideas. Do these ideas open you up, or do they shut you down? What's your relationship with this idea? And how do you come into right relationship with these ideas, right? Oh, thank you, Joanna. I will totally read that in a minute, that comment. So there is another side, a perhaps more organic, natural side to hive mind. And this is what we see in the ant people, but also in bees and other insects that live in colonies. Now, people label things like drones, right? Or workers, and and they're doomed to this. But what they don't realize is that, in bringing it into a more anthropomorphic vision here, when you're looking at your own intentions to walk a path of service. When you're walking a path of service, that means that you are aware that you belong to nature, and you're not here just for you. You're here quite literally for everything around you. Like this tree is growing. This tree isn't growing for its own benefit. It's growing in relationship to everything that's around it. And because of the symbiotic nature, the synergetic nature of Mother Nature, this tree's very existence, its influence serves life all around it. Well, that's how we want to be as humans. We want to have a life that is in harmony with nature, and our very existence here benefits others, is the benefit of others. And that others could be people, it could be nature, it could be elemental beings, all of the above, or just single groups, stuff like this. So there is an existence. There is a piece within this for us when we start looking at what we do that serves. And it's something that comes out of us as if we don't walk like that, if we don't feel like we're in service or a benefit to life, somehow we're betraying ourselves. We're betraying the very sole purpose to why we're here, right? There's some kind of sense like that. And I mean, you guys let me know if you have a sense like that. I mean, is service a part of your desire on this planet? Is you being a benefit to all life on this planet? Is that part of what satiates you in your walk in this life? Most star seeds, most spiritual leaning people, that's part of it, right? And if you are not, it's not right or wrong, good or bad. I'm not saying that. So when you dial this in relationship to hive mind, I mean, think about your own path of service. You're doing it out of love. You're doing it out of passion, compassion, bringing beauty, bringing truth, bringing liberation, bringing, support and sustenance to the life around you. You're quite literally feeding and nurturing life force by you making choices in your path of service. And I don't mean enslavement level service. I'm talking about walking in your joy, and in that somehow you are being a benefit to all life as you walk that, right? Well, who's to say that the bees and the ants and their collective fields aren't in that same vein? Several years ago, maybe 2012, I was at an event where just before the event there was a Stargate opening. Really profound teaching that I had when that Stargate opened. It was a Sirian Stargate. I've worked with that energy before, but this is the first time I was alone on a body of water in the mountains when that gate was opening. And I, went into a very deep altered state and watched this bee make love to this flower for Lord knows how long. I mean, hours. It could have easily been hours. I walked back from that hike very sun-kissed, so it was a while. Anyway. And I'm in ecstatic bliss watching this bee make love to this flower. And that created a really deep connection between me and bee consciousness and flower consciousness. But bee consciousness was where a lot of my dialogues were happening. I don't know about you guys, but flowers and plants don't have a lot to say usually. They kind of hold a space, they hold an energy. And it's just this really mellow movement. Bees are a little bit more busier like we are. Like they say, busy bee, right? So, and the bees, the queen bee consciousness was revealing herself and gave me a download, letting me know, that the hive consciousness, as she and the hive experience it, it's a path of love and service to life. Love and service to life. So every single bee there is there doing its role because they want to be there, because they are in ecstatic bliss doing what they're doing. And as soon as any of them decide they don't want to do what they're doing, they can leave. They're free to leave, do whatever they want. And all the males, which are the drones, they do leave. They leave. And the highest path of service for a drone is to be lucky enough to find a queen to create a hive with. But most don't. Most just go out on their own. They explore the world and then they die. They die while they're exploring. That doesn't sound like a bad life to me. Right? Does that sound like a bad life to you? So the females of the hive, they're the ones that caretake all the young ones. They're the ones that are going out into the flowers and bringing back honey. A lot of people don't realize that. Those are all female bees that are doing that. And the ones that are leaving the hive and getting the honey, that is their second half of their life. The first half of their life, the lifespan of a bee is about 4 weeks. The first half of their life, they stay within the hive, nurturing and nurturing the young that are coming forward, but also processing and the inner workings of the hive, not just with the honey, but helping the queen and doing all this other stuff. So after they reach 2 weeks, they have the option to continue doing what they're doing until they die, or they can go out into the world and do what they want to do. And so they do that. They go off into the world and they explore, find flowers, and bring back the honey, all in a state of bliss, in a state of loving service for the life of the hive. Now that is the natural, organic version of hive mind. And when I got that download from Queen Bee, I instantly saw the connection with humans and how our operation in the collective field is very similar. For those of us on a path of focusing on cultivating our yes for love, dismantling from all these suffering programs and getting deeper and deeper and deeper into our ecstatic state, we are walking our path with love for life. I mean, love for our life, but also love for life around us. And we do things that feed and nurture life with joy, gladly, right? Gladly we do this. I mean, even something as simple as feeding the birds. We don't do it because we have to. We do it because we love to do it. I love feeding the birds. I find it fascinating. And I love watching the birds interacting. And I love the bird songs that come with feeding the birds. So the whole thing is a symbiotic cycle of bringing happiness and joy to each other by just doing what we do, right? All right, let me pause right there and check in with a couple things because Joanne commented about water. So she's talking about Bulgaria's water is also pristine. The water stored under the mountain area of the Balkans is alkaline and delicious. Yes, yes, yes. We went to a ancient, or ancient's too extreme of a word, actually, it's the oldest currently operating Sufi temple in the Balkans called Blaja Teke. And it's 600 years old. It's still in operation. And for those of you who don't know who the Sufi are, this is the mystical branch of the mystical order of the Islamic tradition. And this is built right outside of this giant cave opening on a cliff face. And out of it flows the most pristine blue water I have ever seen in my life. I mean, it is so blue. Like, how in the world is this water this blue? It turns out that there's chemical compounds in it that make it extremely alkaline, not to the point of causing harm to skin or anything, but really it's just a really healthy water. And it tastes so sweet, so sweet. And I remember thinking how lucky the villages are to have this as their water source. It really goes to show on, why they're so healthy, the population. All right, so the Balkans have a lot going on, right? The Balkans have a lot of cool stuff going on. And maybe that can trigger on why there's so much propagation of conflict by the powers that be within the Balkans, because there's an agenda getting played out. All right, young trick named Jim says, I am in service through my joyous state, but I was also in service through the pain and suffering I've caused in the past. Before my baseline was one of joy. Yeah, so he's talking about he's in service regardless if it's pain and suffering. At one time that was the baseline, and now his baseline is one of joy, and yet he's still in beautiful service. Thank you, young trick. That's great. Okay, thank you. Have a good one. Have a good one, young trick. Thank you for your share. So I'm just sharing this to reframe up the idea about Hivemind. Okay, it's really, we really need to pay attention to these narratives, and we can explore them absolutely, because as we're exploring them, we're decoding, right? We're decoding things, and then we're coming full circle with things. And once we come full circle, these different pieces don't have power over us. And what I mean about power over us, it means it doesn't send us into a tailspin of thoughts and emotions that aren't preferable, that aren't, the truth of our true nature, that are disempowering, spiraling down these thoughts and emotions of disempowerment. So getting to collective fields, right? This is the grid work, right? I love the languaging that's coming out from the Starseed community, the word grid work. Now, those of us who've been around for a while, we know this has been happening for quite some time, not as conscious as it is these days because the veils were so much thicker back then, but nonetheless, it's really interesting work. And I want to invite you guys that are interested in exploring grid work, because we are going to, all right, so I mentioned these Moreland Hills, the Ant People technology within that's in the landscape of Kansas, and then in Oklahoma, and then we have all this other kind of technologies and other types of mechanisms that work against these frequencies, these field potentials coming online. So when I'm talking about grid work, I'm talking about addressing the things that are locking down the collective grid fields for these bigger, higher potentials, more robust and imbued consciousness potentials to come on board, to come online. So May 26th is our next grid working session, and we're going to be working out those overlays, the overlays that are hijacking, or let's say maintaining extreme states of suffering and oppression in those areas. So the suffering and oppression isn't just the human experience, it's also the elemental experience. There's like a lot of barrenness. I don't know if you guys remember back in I think it was the 30s, there was the great dust bowl that happened in that area of the United States. So there is layer upon layer of pain and suffering, and then it gets anchored in with trauma and war, and with other mystical, and within other mystical means and interdimensional shenanigans. So so what we're going to do is come in there and start unlocking some of these pieces that are not just siphoning off life force energy, but also locking down consciousness, so these field potentials can come more easily back in line. And there's many different layers. I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the facilitators in Light Body pointed this out. We have a famous story about General Custer, right? Famous story, Custer's Last Stand, right? Did you guys know that Custer and his wife were their home base was in Hays, Kansas? Okay, so how mystical overlays happen is that there's a connection between all these pieces, and it seems like they're all random pieces, but they are all connected energetically. And in that energetic connection, it gets anchored into the collective field. So this is important because he's got a history with the Masons and other powers that be, and it's no accident that his story is immortalized in legend. Okay, there's no accident that his story has been immortalized in legend. So that's how a lot of these pieces work. It's like we have a legend about something, we think it's just a story, or we think it's just a piece of history, but it's not. There's a very specific reason why that story out of history is the one proliferated. There's a very significant reason why these narratives shift and change according to our relationship to certain energies. So that's what we're working on, unraveling these pieces that are infiltrating the great consciousness within that area. Of course, it goes a lot broader than that. I found out that so far, right? So when I'm looking at just the human realm, that whole lockdown of consciousness started with the very first battle of the Civil War, which was the Battle of Manassas. I don't know if you guys know your history at all about what happened there, but it's all about maintaining divide, maintaining an enemy, the perception of an enemy, maintaining prejudice, maintaining us and them mentality. So that's the human level of the grid part. And of course, there's a much more macro kind of level of the grid part, and that is where the technology, the hijacking, enslavement, and then recovery of the ant people story come in. And then we're talking about, stargates and major energy consciousness pillars, getting distorted. So there's different layers that we work on. And if you feel drawn at all to any one of these pieces that I'm talking about, I encourage you guys to check it out. We have it on our social media. It's the grid working session that's happening on May 26th. It's on our Telegram group, our Rise group, and in our Instagram. And plot out 3 hours of your time, because we're going to go in, break up into different groups to track on these different levels and start the unwinding process. And there's a lot of very, very, very amazing people within Light Body. So you'll be joining a lot of them. in this process. And when we work in groups like this, there's a collective resonance that builds. So often what happens is that your own intuitive abilities get a boost, your own healing abilities get a boost. You actually start getting downloads from that, because those field potentials open in such a way, you're now more available to these other frequencies that download deeper understandings, that activate DNA that hasn't been active in the DNA dance yet. So it's a mutual beneficial for everybody involved. So it's one of those things where that act of service feeds and nurtures all life that is involved. So it's the people individually in the group, it's the collective of the group, it's the lands, it's the elementals, it's the populace. You see what I mean? It's the interdimensional exchanges, it's star consciousness, it's energy lines, dragons. I mean, so it just ripples out interdimensionally through all these realms. It's really fun work. I like it a lot. So that's my invitation for that, you guys. And if you don't catch it on any of those social media places, you can always just email us at wecare@lightbodyacademy.com. Alrighty, darlings. What a journey we went on today. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for holding this field of potential open for me to talk about these pieces in this way. I'm so grateful to you guys. Without you, I would never come to these places and be able to talk like this. So I really appreciate what the space that you hold and what you do for me to be able to voice these pieces. And I really love that you guys, are so dedicated and sincere in your own practice. You're really solid in your own right of how you work in the world, and I thank you for that. That's it for me. I love you guys. We'll see you next week. Mwah. Bye-bye.